Welcome, everyone, and thank you once again for joining us this afternoon. My name is Chaba Manolok, and your mics will be off and muted, and you have videos sometimes. The views of the speaker are theirs and not those of empowerment. We are but just providing a platform for this crucial talk during this lockdown period. We would like to thank the speaker's firm for organizing the speakers. We have had conversations since the 22nd of April, and today, on the 26th of April, we're going to be hearing from Tim Grage, and I'll introduce him a little bit later. It's the second last presentation that we'll have of these talks and of the day. So why empowerment platform, especially during this lockdown period? First, to change the narrative from pointing a finger at men to inviting men to play their part in finding sustainable solutions to the social challenge of equality. Secondly, to equip men to rise above the stereotypes, the status quo, and become holistically great men. Third, to inspire men to fight for all the right reasons, stand up for all the right things, and unapologetically embrace all it means to be a man. Lastly, we want to provide an inclusive platform that challenges every person who calls himself male, no matter their position in life, sexual preference, stature, or nature, to become an active agent of change at home, at work, and in their community. Thank you very much for everybody that's already joined us on Zoom, who went to our WhatsApp line of 082 088 5262, as well as visiting the website www.empowerment.co.za. A big welcome to everyone around the world who is watching this streamed live on the following digital platforms: EmpowerWorks, YouTube, Instagram @Empowerment, Twitter @Empowerment, and Facebook @Empowerment. And the hashtag that we've been using throughout the week for these talks is #IamEmpowerment. The next speaker is Tim Grage. He's a senior leader at the Citizen of Zion. He's an executive coach, a blind spot specialist, and a speaker. And he will be talking to us about men and spirituality. Over to you, Tim.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to be on Empowerment. I'm so glad for this opportunity. Sechaba, thank you. Simpiwe, I'm so glad that you're also online. Thank you for this chance. To all the men out there, those that are watching, those that have zoomed into this call, those that are on Facebook, YouTube, the website, it's so good to be having this chat with you. Of course, as Sechaba has already mentioned, we men, we have become an endangered species, and it's not just me saying it. It is clear from the statistics that we have become an endangered species. And unfortunately, there aren't enough programs that's out there for us to be able to engage. Look, it's so easy to want to blame the government and other institutions for this, but let's be frank. It is also because it is a difficult thing to pull men together. One of the things that I also do for a living is I offer my services and my time to counsel individuals, men, women, children, whoever. And it's amazing how a lot of times when men show up at my office, irrespective of what they're going through, they usually end up there only after the key situation has gone extremely out of hand. I guess it's because of our ego. We have this sense of thinking that we can always handle it by ourselves, and by the time we cry out for help, it's usually when the whole house is on fire. And so it becomes very difficult for men to be pulled together in a healthy brotherhood, safe space for us to be able to engage. And I guess it's one of the key reasons why conversations and platforms like Empowerment becomes important. My topic for today is man or men and spirituality. So I have a few things that I'm going to throw out there. I am on a timer, so let me see how much I can cover during this time. What is spirituality? Generally, we define spirituality in a broad sense as any engagement with that which is non-tangible. So any engagement with that which is non-tangible, particularly with that which is referred to as a spiritual force, as a non-physical force. This is what we call spirituality. More specifically, though, spirituality is our engagement or our relationship, from my perspective, and quite strongly so, with God Almighty and with His Son, Jesus Christ. So let me start from here. when we talk about man and spirituality, observe this. The way God created man, or created universe, everything looks to its source for survival. Everything is God's standard of creation. So when God was going to create the fish, he spoke to the waters, and then the waters produced the fish, Genesis 1. And so the fish looks to the waters for its survival. When God was going to create the animals, he spoke to the earth. For those of you that know your old Bible school story, and he spoke to the earth, and from the earth the animals came forward, and now the animals look to the earth for their resource and for their survival. When God was going to create man, on the other hand, he didn't look to any of the externals. He looked to himself. And so the Bible says in Genesis chapter 1, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. And so God looked to himself, and man was fashioned after himself, which is very important to note, because following the same principle, then now man has to look to God, his source, for his survival. Now, this is very, very important. Pay attention to what I'm about to say. When God created man and placed man on the earth, three things were put in motion. Three important things were put in motion. One, his relationship with his creator, his relationship with God. Two, his relationship with work, because one of the first things that man was given after God, because when God created man and placed him on the earth, man was given God. But after he was given God, the next thing he gave man was work. He actually gave man work. And so he was given God, so his relationship with God, his relationship with his work. And then subsequently, we notice in Genesis chapter 2 from verse 7, he was also given a woman. And so three things that define the plethora of all our existence as men and maybe even as mankind. Three things. One, our relationship with our God. Two, our relationship with our work. Three, our broad sectional relationships. And so we're talking about marital, parental, work-related relationships. These three areas cover every section of our human existence. Every other area of your life you can think of can fit into these three broad categories. And so it becomes important. Now, let me break it down. When we talk about these three broad categories, we start with the first one. It speaks about his God, and when he speaks about his God, which is in essence what we're talking about, spirituality, is speaking about man's source. Now, the relationship with man and God is very important because it answers two questions, two existential questions, the two most important questions. See, three relationships that govern our existence. One, relationship with God. Two, relationship with your work. Three, relationships in general with people. Now, with our relationship with God, our relationship there answers two important questions. And these two questions, the answers to them, the accuracy of our answers to these two questions inform every other thing in our existence. If we don't get these two answers right, every other thing in our existence will be colored, will be fractured. A lot of the fractured experiences that we have in any area of our lives is hinged to a false understanding or a wrong answer to these two questions, which our relationship with God Almighty is supposed to answer. And what are these two questions? Hope you are taking notes. Question number one, who am I? Who am I? It's a question of identity. It's a question that seems to define who you are. Question number two, which stems from question number one, but question number two is a question that answers the topic of purpose. And so when we speak about purpose, you are answering the question, what am I here for? So I know who am I and what am I here for? Please understand that when you answer these two questions, let me look at my notes here. When you answer these two questions, the answers inform your work, the answers inform your relationships. Let me move forward. When we talk about your work, please understand that there is a difference between your work and your job. Your job is what you do in order to make an income, earn an income so that you can survive. Your work is what you have been assigned to do. Remember, I just explained the concept of you knowing that you have been placed on this earth with a purpose. So when we talk about your work, if you now know your purpose, based on your purpose, based on who you are, your identity, what have you been created to do? That's your work. Your job is what you are doing to earn a living. The whole goal for us as men should be to come to the place where your job is also your work. come to a place. I can't count the number of times men have sat in my office. I'm talking about whether they be pastors or whether they be CEOs, COOs, or whether they be the average man who you will refer to as the average man that walks off the street, whoever. I can't count the number of times men have sat in front of me and they're talking about how their whole life is falling apart. And on interrogation, I'm what you call a blind spot specialist because we all have blind spots. On interrogation, we discover that they are busy. It doesn't matter what they earn. It's amazing how we discover that money indeed does not answer everything. And on interrogation, we discover that their sense of depression, their feelings of frustration is a lot of times because their work is not yet their job. And they're busy slaving and investing, and they've invested their lives. You know, John Maxwell said something that is so interesting. He said, it's a sad day in your world when you climb up a ladder to the top of a building, and when you get to the top, you realize the building you were supposed to climb was across the street. The kind of frustration that it brings is unbelievable. And so the key here is when we understand who we are, we understand what our purpose is, and which is what I want to put a spotlight on. How do you discover this? When you understand these two, it helps you define your work. And also note this. I say this to men all the time. It is God first gave man work before he gave him core relationships. And this is very important. This is one of the reasons why for all of us, the way our work environment affects us is unbelievable. When a man's work, myself, yourself, for those of you that are men watching, when our work is compromised, it doesn't matter if our marriages are great. All of a sudden, we feel as if we are failures. There is just something about when your work collapses. I've seen men who have actually been able to survive better the collapse of their marriage than they survived the collapse of their work. There is something about work that gives a man a sense of purpose. Now, in the end, though, we are all supposed to come to that place as men where you are able to juggle all three. You are able to juggle your relationship with God, connected and with your relationship with your work, with your relationship with your family. Do you know what the goal has to be? Oh, everyone listening, please hear this. The goal has to be that when you cross the finish line of your life, and I'm assuming that the finish line of your life is when you have exhausted everything that you are meant to bring to your world. I'm thinking the finish line of your life will have to be a scenario where you have advanced in age and you have exhausted all your pursuits. Let's say you get to your definition of your finish line. God's expectation is that when you look behind you, every aspect of your life crosses the finish line. For those that work with me, they know that this is a statement I make all the time. God does not want you as a man to have what is called a Pyrrhic victory, where yes, you were victorious in your work, and yet all your relationships were fractured, chaotic, and useless. You were great in your relationship with God. Maybe you got born again and you served God and you invested in church and blah, blah, blah. You did all of that. But you were useless to your world. You brought no service to mankind. Your relationships, your marriage was torn apart. Your children were wayward and useless to the world that you brought them into. That is not God's desire. My desire for you, and also God's desire for you, is that when your time is up, you look behind you and everything crossed the finish line. Now, how do we do this? How do we ensure that everything crosses the finish line? Now, we're talking about spirituality. So I'm going to really just stay on the concept of your identity and the concept of your purpose. Now, when you begin to develop a relationship with God, you see, I am not going to dwell on the questions of why do I favor Christianity? I'm a pastor. So make that assumption already that I favor Christianity. I'm not going to dwell on the fact. I'm not going to begin to answer those, for me right now, distracting questions on whether it's Jesus, Yeshua, did the gospel oppress us? You can go answer those questions for yourself. What I'm going to focus on is how your pursuit of God, your pursuit, as you begin to develop a core interaction, a core relationship with this God, how that begins to bring two key things into your life. And I'm going to talk to you about those two key things. As you begin to develop your relationship with God, He begins to give you two things. He begins to build in you a virtue. That is your virtues. That is your core character system. And He begins to give you values. When we talk about values, we're talking about your perspective about key areas of your existence. He builds within you virtues. He builds within you values. Remember, when He created man before the fall of man, man was created in His image, in the image of God and in God's likeness. So man was given the capacity of God. Man was given the virtues of God. Man had integrity extraordinaire. Man's word, because man's word was his bond. Please understand this. Because man's word was his bond, when man also spoke over the earth responded to man. Science has already been able to tell us that the universe responds to words. Man's words were so potent in the beginning because his integrity was intact. God built everything on the earth. When He was done building, He hinged everything on your integrity. Oh, to the men, I'm speaking to you. God hinged everything He created on the face of the earth on your integrity. Did you notice that when He was even going to create woman, and He pulled woman in Genesis chapter 2, He didn't pull woman from the head of man. He didn't pull woman from the feet of man. He didn't pull woman from the head of man because a woman was not supposed to be the head of the man. He didn't pull woman from the feet of men because men are not supposed to trample upon them. He pulled the woman from the side of man. Why? So that men will understand two things, amongst others. Men will understand that women, in as much as they don't have the kind of physical strength that we might have, they are our equal. Women are our equal, except in a marriage environment where they are still your equal. The only difference is it's a partnership and every partnership must have a head, but they are your equal. That's number one. Number two, he was also pulled from the side, but it went further to tell us which side. He was pulled, the woman rather, she was pulled from the rib of man. What is the rib cage of man? The rib cage of man speaks to the integral structure of the man. It speaks to that structure of the man that holds everything together. It speaks to the integrity of a man. You see, this is why it is so important for we as men to hold on and protect our integrity. When we talk about integrity, we are talking about faithfulness. So from God's perspective, when He created you as a man, He created a being that will be the example of faithfulness. When we talk about faithfulness, what do we mean? When we say faithfulness, we are talking about, let me try and read it so I don't get it wrong here. When we talk about faithfulness, we're talking about steadfastness, we're talking about commitment, we are talking about a sense of loyalty to a cause or to a person or to a people. We're talking about someone whose integrity is not fractured. Let me continue. I'm looking at my time. Please appreciate that as you begin to build, and this is why every man must build a relationship with God, because He gives him his virtues. What are virtues? Virtues are the composite content of your integrity. When we talk about virtues, I'm referring to these virtues. I want to read it to you from the book of Ephesians, or rather Galatians chapter 5, so that you understand. Virtues are different from values. Men, I hope you are with me. Virtues are different from values. When we talk about virtues, we're talking about what the Bible refers to in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 as the fruit of the Spirit. When we say Spirit there, we're talking about the real you. We're not talking about the reflection you see in the mirror. We're not talking about that. That reflection you see in the mirror is not the real you. That reflection could be tall, short, black, light, it doesn't matter. That reflection is inconsequential because the limitations of that reflection you are seeing is not tied to that reflection. The limitations of that reflection is tied to someone deeper. It's tied to the real you. It's tied to the spirit you. It's not even tied to the soul you, because your soul, your mind, your will, and your emotion is a product of the spirit you. I hope somebody is hearing me. That is your true identity. That is the one that is supposed to be independent. Hear me? It's supposed to be independent of your circumstances. It's supposed to be independent of your experiences. It's supposed to be independent of the encounters that you will have. It's supposed to be independent even of your education. We are talking of the real you that is embedded on the inside. You know, the real you, the one that is able, right now as you are listening to me, to stand outside of you and look at you. That's the one I'm talking about. The one that is able to look at you even though you are looking at me right now. That's the real you. That is the one that God is interested in. Because if God can get that one right, if you can let God get that one right, everything else begins to align. When we talk about virtues, we're talking about Galatians 5:22, where it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, is joy, is peace, is long-suffering, is gentleness, is goodness, it's faith, it's meekness, is self-control. It now says, against such there is no law. I don't have time to go back there, but I just quoted Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. Those are your virtues if you are born again. Meaning you have accepted Jesus as your Lord and your Savior. Listen, it doesn't matter your kind of behavior, your way of behavior. If you've accepted Jesus as Lord, listen to me. Those virtues are already in you. I do understand that you might be saying, I lack self-control. Pastor Tim, you don't know me. I lack self-control. You might be listening to me and you might be saying, I'm so indisciplined. My character is flopped. I make mistakes here. If you have received Jesus, it does not matter. Those virtues are already in you. The whole concept of building a relationship then with Jesus is to bring you to that place where he helps you work out of you the virtues he has already placed in you. Those virtues is not something you should be crying to God for. Those virtues are already in you. You are already patient. I know you were saying you are getting impatient now with this lockdown. You are getting so impatient with your kids. Patience is already in you. I know you were saying, but sometimes I lose my temper. Maybe I get violent at times. I know. But that ability, temperance, is already in you. The question is not where can I get more? The question is how can I work what is already in me out? All right? But I can't even dwell there. The second thing with respect to that, remember I said his virtues and his values. He begins to give you values. What are values? Values are the standards to which you hold yourself accountable to. Let me say it again. If you're taking notes, take it down. What are values? They are the standards to which you hold yourself accountable to. Now, remember, I've just explained these virtues and values. Your values birth your virtues. Listen, your values help you birth or help you live out your virtues, because your virtues can only be lived out in real life situations. You will know that you can be patient if there is no circumstance to test that, if there is no circumstance to put that to work. And so it is your values. When you are able to define your values, it helps you define and it helps you reveal your virtues. Also helps you reveal the areas of your life that you need to workshop. Let me continue. Listen, when there is faithfulness, remember I told you about integrity. When there is faithfulness, when there is accountability, when these things are in place, you become a man that is stable. I'm going to pause here. Let me see. Let me make sure I've said all the core things before I go into something else. Yes. Let me pause here. Understand that if you are going to be effective, you will need to ensure these things are operational in your life. When you begin to develop a sense of value, a value system, listen, two things become necessary. I know there's a lot of two things I'm giving you. So I hope you are drawing a tree that is showing you the connections. So you know how this gives birth to this and this gives birth to this, so that you can find your way. When you begin to try and build a sense of value for your marriage, sense of value, values that you will use to govern your children, sense of value that you will use as your work ethic, when you begin to build that, two things are necessary: a sense of responsibility and a sense of accountability. I am about to go deep. For the next 5 minutes, work with me. A sense of responsibility and a sense of accountability. Listen, in every relationship of your life, whether it's your work relationship, whether it's your home relationship, whether it's your familial relationship, if you are going to swing the pendulum of success from an area of no success to an area of super success, remember there are stages in between, to an area of super success, you need these two things. You need a sense of responsibility and a sense of accountability. Your relationship with God, because it answers those two pivotal questions, gives you the answers, gives you the fortitude to be able to develop responsibility and accountability. Let me break it down. If you are going to develop a sense of responsibility, what does it mean? Responsibility means you are waking to the truth that if you are going to succeed in your marriage, if you are going to succeed in your health, if you are going to succeed in your business, the power to succeed is in your hands. Did you hear me? Not even in the hands of God, it's in your hands. The closer you get to God, particularly if you are born again, the more God begins to show you that He has given you His power to succeed. See, that's why you will never become proud, because you remember that it is He that works in you, both to will and to do according to His good pleasure. That's what God begins to show you, that He has given you His power to succeed. You then, as the pendulum begins to swing, you then realize that I'm not supposed to blame my spouse for the failure of my marriage. The power is in my hands. I'm not supposed to blame the government and their policies for how my business has not succeeded. The power is in my. If you're listening to me and you're saying, no, Pastor Tim, you don't know my wife, that's why you're saying so. It is her fault. You're listening to me and you're saying you don't know the economic scenario or industry that I am playing in. That's why you're saying so. It is because you are thinking like that you have not been able to break out. The first key, one of the first things that your identity in God, that Jesus reveals to you, is this: I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. When you come to Him, it just causes you to realize that you are not more powerful than you think you are. You are the best thing after sliced bread from God's perspective. As far as God is concerned, you are more capable than you have ever thought you could be. The power is in your hand. The power to change your health. The power to change your relationships, the power to change your business. As you are listening to me, man, I want you to say with me, I've got the power. It is not a sense of careless pride. It is not a lack of appreciation of the power of God. It is an appreciation of the power of God through Jesus that He has placed in you. I've got the power. No circumstance. Do you know the excuses that we give for the failure of different areas of our lives? If you look carefully, you will find people with the same deck of cards dealt to them that succeeded. And then what is our excuse? It means then the issue is not the cards you have been dealt. The issue is always how you play the game. And you play the game, number one, by taking personal responsibility, realizing that through Christ, all power has been given to me. Saints, as you start with that, the pendulum of success begins to swing. And as it swings, you enter into the next area of accountability. And that's where I'm going to stop. I have realized that when men are not accountable to anybody, they are tyrants. There has been nobody on the face of the planet, not one except Jesus, who was ever given ultimate power in any situation, whether it was in the home front, in the business front, or any front. There is nobody that has ever been given power without accountability that did not become a tyrant. This is why you must be, and there's so much more I can say, but I'm out of time. You must become accountable to someone. I say to the singles that come to me, single ladies, when you find a man that is not accountable to anybody, there is no system around him that can call him to order when he's beginning to misbehave. No system that he bows his head to. In every system, his head is raised up high, and he's always the king of the jungle everywhere he goes. I tell them to run from that man, because power reveals. People say power corrupts. Power cannot corrupt. Power reveals. It reveals your fracture. It reveals your brokenness. Without accountability, all men go rogue. So it is necessary to find a sense of accountability. Initially, as you begin your walk, your spiritual walk with God, He brings you into a collective and He brings you into a healthy circle, healthy company, so that they can hold you accountable to the virtues that you claim that you have, hold you accountable to the values that you claim that your heart is committed to, your value in any area. These individuals, God brings them into your life to hold you accountable. If your circle cannot hold you accountable, you are in the wrong circle. If all your circle does is encourage you to eat and to drink and to have fun, you are in the wrong circle. In that area of your life, you will be compromised. I hope I'm making sense. You'll be compromised. So you start out with a small circle that you become accountable to, and you submit yourself to that circle. And so be careful when you come to that circle. But finally, the ultimate accountability that God wants you to have, and this is where I'll close. The ultimate accountability that God wants you to have is to come to that place where you become accountable to the God that is in you. I hope right now that has made sense to you. I've said a lot of things. Try to compress everything. If you're listening and all that I've said has made sense, I conclude by saying this. Find your way, if you have strayed, back to your God. I am the way, the truth, and the light. Jesus said so. Find your way to Him. He does not discriminate. Doesn't matter your background, history, sexual orientation, does not matter anything. Find your way to Him. Start the journey there, and you will see He will build you. He will help you. Thank you so much. I'm out of time, Sechaba. Thank you for this opportunity. I hope I made sense to somebody out there.
Thank you so much, Pastor Tim Chris. Thank you so much. We're grateful. And thank you to everyone that joined us using our WhatsApp line, 082-088-5262, and through our empowerment website. And for everyone that listens from around the world on our social media handles of YouTube, Empowerment, as well as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, following the hashtag Empowerment. The next speaker is going to be coming up at 3 o'clock. It's going to be the last speaker that will be talking about men and his God. And I would like to open all your mics now just to thank Pastor Tim for everything that he has shared with us this afternoon and for taking his time to talk about accountability and where we should basically go back to make sure that we all are accountable, something higher than ourselves. And all your mics are muted.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pastor Tim. That was powerful.